One world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole here on the Orion Talk Radio Network, oriontalkradio.com. It is July 13th, 2012. That's right, Friday the 13th, 2012. Ooh, everybody be scared. Ooh, did the news media put out enough retarded stories to get enough people frightened to not even leave their houses yet today? I saw some of the local crap down here. Just every Friday the 13th they do it. It's disgusting. Anyway, tonight I have a treat. Joining me for 2 hours to go over a slew of topics is researcher, filmmaker, radio show host, and my friend, Holland Vandennieuwenhof. Holland, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It is indeed a pleasure to be on this show.
And we're going to update about your film, but we're not going to solely, just focus on Oklahoma City and what happened. I want to get your thoughts on a bunch of other stuff. Usually when you come on people's shows, I know people grill you about, your investigation into Oklahoma City, and I've done that multiple times already. Mm-hmm. But, I talk to you off air, we have conversations, and you're a really smart dude. So I wanted to get you back on and get your take on other things as well and let the listeners hear it as well, because you're not just a one-trick pony. So, you know what I mean? Some people you can only bring on, for one thing. Other people you can just have on whenever, and you're one of those whenever people. So I'm glad you were willing to come back on. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on, Popeye. And yes, I'd be glad to talk about anything. Of course, Oklahoma City is always usually at the top of the list because of my work there, but I've been looking into these deep state events for a number of years now, and it was my honor to be able to present to the public an expose of just one of these events that affected my hometown. But I am free to talk about anything. So, well,
let's
again,
go.
Popeye, thanks.
Let's update, the listeners as to what's going on with the movie and how, I know you guys have been all over the place. Between you and James and Chris. You guys have been running around representing at a couple different film festivals and everything, which is awesome because that means that people are actually paying attention to the film. And it's a way to, it's like info jamming the mainstream, basically. You're going to these film festivals and people are watching it and they're going, holy crap. Like, wow. So that's awesome. So let's get into that. We'll start there and then we'll get into other things.
Well, yeah, it was always our intention to try to get this film out to as many mainstream venues as possible. So we did vigorously pursue the film festival route. And if you have a quality product, you can get good results. We've been recognized in 4 thus far, and we picked up Best Historical Documentary Feature at the Bare Bones. We recently showed in San Antonio, the San Antonio International Film Festival. And the purpose of that is not only just to get a larger audience, but also for the hopes of picking up distribution overseas or even mainstream distribution here in this country. And we are currently pursuing in the initial stages of a distribution deal. We didn't think it would come, but it just came out of the blue. So we're pursuing that now, which is one reason why we have not released it in its entirety for free yet, because we don't want to affect that. And the reason we want to do that is if we get a distribution deal, I mean, this thing can be shot across the globe in lots of different outlets that people are going to see it, and we really want that. We're fully confident that the movie will be a YouTube sensation once it's released for free also. And we already have it ready. We're getting ready to push the button when this new news came down, so we're waiting to see if it pans out or if it doesn't. But anyways, it has received some recognition, and people have heard about it. I'm hearing second-party references already and seeing conversations about it. So I'm more than pleased with its reception.
Well, I told you.
And of course, I'm sorry. We haven't mentioned the name A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995. That's the name of the movie.
Yes, A Noble Lie. And I have to tell you, I told Holland, I said this on air the last time you guys were on, but I've told you this off air. Like, you guys, my father was on the fence. I told you this. He was, I could see how they could do it, but he was still kind of on the fence. And then I sat him down and I said, just watch this. And I plunked him in front of my TV, put the movie in, and I just let him watch it. I didn't bother him, you know. He sat there and he watched the whole thing, and his jaw was on the floor. And he was like, you know, as soon as the credits rolled, he looked at me and he said, he's 70 years old, so he doesn't mince words. He doesn't, you know, he doesn't have time to bullshit anymore. Mm-hmm. And he just turned his head and looked at me and said, they did it. I was on the fence. They did it. These guys are scumbags. You know, he's like, make me copies of this movie so I can give it to my friends. So I burned him like 10 copies, and he handed them out to everybody he knows.
That warms my heart, because that was the ultimate goal, not just to expose the bombing, but to wake the audience up to what this corrupt government is capable of, what they have done in the past, and the implications for now and the future. That was the real goal, was to wake people up to what this government is capable of and what it will do in the future to accomplish its agenda. So in your case, and hopefully in lots of other cases, it has accomplished that goal.
Well, again,
in your father's case, yeah.
Well, it's a powerful tool. I mean, it's again, there was no quintessential film about the subject. You had Murder in the Heartland, which was a good documentary, but it was old, and there was so much evidence that you guys actually, you know, you took some of the leads that were out there and ran with them and actually got, again, there's no speculation or anything in your movie. It's all just hardcore facts and interviews with people and stuff and testimonials. And I think that's one of the things that really drives things home, that and the local media footage. Again, I tell people that's one of the, anytime a big event happens, try to pay attention to any of the local media outlets, because you'll hear stories that you won't hear anywhere else. It happened with me personally on 9/11. I was right there. All the local media, we heard that they were tailing the plane, meaning Flight 93, and they shot it down. They were talking about that on the local airwaves within 10, 15 minutes of Flight 93 crashing. Oh, they shot down a plane in Pennsylvania. And then all of a sudden it was, no, the passengers crashed it. And everybody that I knew locally said the same thing. There's no way that, you know, they probably shot that thing down and they're just saying the passengers crashed it so the public doesn't get outraged that they took out a passenger jet filled with civilians.
Mm-hmm, exactly. But you see the device getting ever tighter each time this event happens. They learn their lessons, they refine their methods. And you see that the local news in 9/11 really got shut down after the first day. And in Oklahoma City, it took a little longer. And in the next event, maybe it'll be almost instantaneous. I don't know. But, I mean, they're literally handing out scripts to these guys now, like in 9/11 when that BBC reporter was reporting on the Solomon Brothers, which is Building 7 building, having
James
collapsed.
Stanley.
Yeah, when it's in the background of the shot. So obviously, she was reading from a script. So, I mean, they're basically just handing out scripts these days.
And you can tell, obviously, whoever was running the show over there didn't have any clue about the New York City skyline, because as she's standing there, you clearly see Building 7 right behind her, or as they call it, the Solomon Brothers building. Yeah, the one that's right over her shoulder right there with the smoke coming out of it.
Yeah, all the local stations and the broadcast stations that were headquartered in New York, they knew what the building was, so they got that script and like, oh, well, obviously this is BS, and they didn't run with it. BBC had no idea, and they actually, they said it on air without verification, and the building standing behind her.
You know what I did that day, and I don't know why I did it. It was just an instinct to do it. I grabbed the videotape. VHS tape, rewound it, and just immediately threw it in the VCR and started recording. And I have 2 tapes of the initial newscasts from that day, and as things were happening. And I took the video footage, and after having it on tape for years and years and years, I rigged something up and I got it over from VHS to DVD, and then I burned it from DVD onto the computer, and I uploaded it to YouTube. And I hadn't sat back and watched it. So one day I was working on Federal Jack, and I just uploaded it. And I was listening kind of, on other tabs, but I was just listening to the newscasts in the background. And I was remembering a lot of what happened that day, because, again, the stuff I recorded, a lot of it was feeds from the local stations. And they started saying things like, oh, there's bombs in the buildings. They were throwing out different numbers of hijacked aircraft, and I started catching things and being like, wow, man, they were just laying the disinfo out from the get-go. And once you know that the official story is crap, right, and you actually go back and you start to watch some of this stuff, you start to see the artistry. And I hate to call it that, but, I mean,
they're good.
Dude, they are good at what they do.
And they can rely upon spineless journalists who are not going to, even when they realize that they're being fed a line of crap, they're not going to do anything about it.
Well, Ashley Banfield, perfect example. She was an on-the-ground reporter that day. There's videos of her. One New York City official, I think it was a cop, was telling her in one of the videos, back up, that building's going to come down, pointing to Building 7 before it came down. And then right after we invaded Iraq, she started talking crap about how she was at a college or something, some sort of symposium, and she had spoken about how they were forced to talk about how the invasion of Iraq is a good thing and that it was sold through the media, and she was instantly fired from her job. And then she disappeared off the media circuit for years and years and years. And then recently she popped up on like Court TV or whatever it was, and all of a sudden she is now back on CNN. I think it's CNN she's on now as an anchor. And when you see her talking on air, she toes the party line now. She's a very different person than how she used to. She still kind of reports with that bubbly, giggly thing that she tries to pull off. Yeah. But the stuff that you can tell it's different. You can tell they gave her the warning, Holland.
She has been properly chastised and doesn't want to throw away years of journalism training and pursue another career, most likely.
Right. Exactly, and that's how they control these people. Or as David Icke calls them, repeaters.
It's amazing to see the media manipulation work. I mean, and when they have actually guys on the scene who look very spook-like, saying, yes, obviously the towers collapsed because of structural failures. Like, how do you know, dude? You're on the street. You just watched 2 towers collapse, and you're saying structural failure when it's never happened before in history. Obviously, he's seeding the official story in the public mind.
Oh yeah, the witnesses. Obviously, the one guy. Obviously, it fell due to structural.
And he's very coherent and very calm. All the genuine eyewitnesses, they're babbling. I mean, they're in shock.
People were crying and freaking out and screaming that day. And this guy is totally calm. Like, he just read his script, walked over, and repeated it verbatim.
I mean, he was like a Zen monk, totally unaffected by the day's events.
and which is incredible if you look at, like, did you ever see the video of the one shell-shocked guy? I have it up on one of my YouTube channels. He was sitting down and they were talking to him, and he's like, they said something about the plane hitting, and he goes, well, first there was an explosion, then the plane hit. So, and he was in the lobby, and he said, I was in the main lobby, there was an explosion, and then the plane hit the building. But that doesn't coincide with the official story.
And it's not packaged for mass consumption later at all. All of these things are reported. It's not like we're I mean, this is all public information. It's all been reported for the most part to one extent or another, but it's not packaged for mass consumption at the end of the 2-week news cycle. Anything that does not fit the government filter is left out.
And if people think that the government and the media don't work together, a perfect example of how they collude is Obama does these little executive orders on a Friday afternoon or a Friday evening, right? Mm-hmm. The media, because of their quote-unquote news cycle, it doesn't get talked about until maybe Monday. And usually between Friday and Monday, some bullshit scandal pops up, Holland.
It's already old news by then.
Yeah, because you have
by the way,
White House or some other crap that comes on to distract you.
Exactly. I mean, this is the 21st century. We're in 2012. These methods have been applied and refined and have been given agency, money, and funding to refine these methods since at least the early 1950s, at the beginning of the Cold War. They've had 60, 70 years to refine a definite methodology for massaging the press and producing desired results. Well, I mean, this isn't haphazard. They're pulling stuff out of their butt. Oh, let's just say this. No. This is very, very practiced. It's passed on from generation to generation to people who rise to power within the power structure, and they deserve the credit. They are very good, and that is why they are successful.
Well, it's like their mind control techniques. Okay, the same thing. Everybody, when you think mind control, everybody automatically just thinks of now because of the alternative media, MK Ultra. And people, I don't even think people realize that what the MK and MK Ultra stands for. The MK actually stands for mind control. No, there you go. Holland said it. The German way of spelling control was with a K. And we based our mind control techniques off of things that we learned from Nazi scientists that we took at it and we smuggled over here after World War II. And this was a science that they had been working on, the German scientists, dating back to the late 1800s.
The Germans had been working even before World War II in the concentration camps. There had been work on producing a slave race for labor. And they were concentrating on the Slavs and the Jews and Gypsies and all these unwanted populations, but they wanted to produce a servile, docile slave race that would mow the lawn and fix the air conditioning while they engaged in poetry and whatever. But this is a very long tradition.
Yeah, so it's not something like I think part of the when people research it, they see the Nazi connection, and they say they stop right there, and they don't realize that there was, the Nazi Party really didn't come to power until the 30s. You know what I mean? In Germany, like the early 30s. So before then, I should say, as we know it. So before then, there was other things going on in Germany. It's not like these scientists were all well-behaved and then Hitler came into power and they were like, okay, I guess we'll be evil. They were practicing this stuff long before he came into the picture. A lot of that stuff, it gets used to, cover the facts so people don't look further. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, the scientific tradition or the scientific methodology of the day was based on many of the discoveries or many of the paradigm established by German psychology in the late 1800s that humankind, was just a biological machine that responded to certain stimuli. And if you could control that stimuli, you could control the person or the stimulus. So you can control the person. And a lot of it was based on the materialistic science paradigm where, there is no soul. We're just biological machines. And those who are in power need to exercise science to control the human race for the betterment of all. It was an elitist attitude, but that elitist attitude stretches back centuries. It's based in aristocratic Platonic ideals, and it was the culmination of centuries of philosophy and theory, and they actually had the science to finally implement it.
Yeah, and what's really astounding to me, okay, and when I found this out, and again, this is something mainstream history doesn't teach. You have to educate yourself to this stuff, but we had just as bad eugenics laws here in the United States as they did in Nazi Germany in the 30s. Yeah,
Hitler's eugenics law was called the Indiana procedure because it was based upon the law that was passed in the state of Indiana in this country to sterilize undesirables. I mean, there were at least 100 to 150,000 people sterilized against their will in the United States over the course of the late 1800s into the mid-1950s. And even in Canada, where another 100,000 at least American Indians were sterilized against their will and without their knowledge. Weren't even told. They were going for procedures or be recommended for procedures, and they would be sterilized. And they were never even told that. That was a recognized and very widespread procedure that was largely funded by nonprofit foundations that were pursuing the goal of eugenics and so forth.
Well, there was one guy, and I can't remember his name right now, but there was a few of them that were really out there. These wannabe psychiatrists or psychologists, whatever they called themselves. These doctors. And I'm doing air quotes when I say that because really, you want to call yourself a doctor? Okay, but these guys, and I forget the one guy's name, but these are the guys that people like Jolly West learn, their thought, the way they think from, and the way they, all their mind control techniques, which that dovetails into your work again. So all this stuff is connected. It's just, it's incredible. But one of these guys, I can't remember his name, Holland, there was a time when being a female was considered a mental deficiency. Being a woman. You just, right off the bat, you're female, you're already mentally deficient because you're a woman.
Exactly. And a lot of this, as lofty as these pseudoscientific attitudes are, a lot of them are based on very ancient prejudices. Prejudices against the so-called lower classes, the lower races, against the other sex. And
these guys idolized people like Nietzsche and Malthus, Darwin.
Well, it was very convenient when you have a society that has a 1% and a 99%, just for convenience sake. When you have a society divided by class, those in the upper class, they're not going to question their good fortune to be born into this class. They're going to seek justification. And if there's a science that comes along to demonstrate their justification for being much more wealthy and powerful and being able to exercise that wealth and power to the detriment of the lower classes, they're going to embrace it. This is the human condition. This is human nature. Of course they will. Not a whole lot of people are capable of that level of introspection and self-questioning of their place and course in life. So, and this is what happens.
And usually when people do start to look into themselves, they see things they don't like, and they project it out onto others and then attack the others for the things that they dislike about themselves rather than face our own evils, because it's much harder to face our own demons and conquer them than it is to literally just project it onto somebody else and attack them for it. It's much easier to do that, but the easy path is never the correct path. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to break. Stay tuned. Holland and I will be right back. Don't go anywhere. We are back, ladies and gentlemen, and Holland and I were discussing mind control. That's where the path led us down last segment. And during the break, I ran and got Jim Mars's book, Rise of the Fourth Reich, so I could find the name of the doctor I was talking about, and it's Dr. Sidney Gottlieb. He's the guy, by the way, that spiked Frank Olson's drink personally with LSD. He admits to it. So, I mean, at least he took the blame. So, this is somebody he worked with, and they're, behind the guy's back, dropping LSD in his drinks just to test it and see what happened. And they did it to other people as well. But I was discussing with Holland how the government itself has admitted that the counterculture in the 60s was actually started out of this drug testing that they were doing for mind control purposes on the public to see what kind of effects certain drugs, including marijuana, had on people's brains. And in the 70s, in 77, Ted Kennedy was on a Senate committee looking into this, and he stated that the deputy director of the CIA revealed that over 30 universities and institutions were involved in an extensive testing and experimentation program which included covert drug tests on unwitting citizens at social levels, high and low, Native Americans, and foreigners. The intelligence community of this nation, which requires a shroud of secrecy in order to operate, has a very sacred trust from the American people. The CIA's program of human experimentation of the 50s and 60s violated that trust. It was violated again the day that, what's his name? I think it was Jesse Helms when he in '73 when he shredded all the information. You can go read. It's right out of Jim's book. It's page 198. You can go.
Oh
read
yeah, that was the Director of Central Intelligence Helms.
Yeah.
He did shred everything upon his departure from office.
Yep, it was Helms that did it. They shredded everything because they didn't want anybody. Isn't he the one that died later on in his backyard? He was swimming in a quote unquote canoe accident. He drowned in the.
No, that was William Colby.
Oh, okay, that's right. See, it's all these CIA guys end up dying of mysterious deaths. So I just couldn't get. I couldn't remember which one.
Well, there was a minor cleanup of CIA agents in the 1970s while these hearings were taking place. A lot of mafia people who were working with the CIA and a lot of CIA agents themselves wound up dying under accidents or strange illnesses.
Yep. What's his name? Frank Sturgis.
Yep. And Gottlieb himself died not long after testifying, I believe, or I may be mistaken on that. Actually, not Gottlieb, but a lot of them were. Morales, who was probably involved with the JFK assassination.
He was the other one. Sturgis and Morales are the two names that come up from E. Howard Hunt, and they come up in the RFK assassination. Morales, he went and had drinks with his buddies, said he wasn't feeling too good, went home and ended up having a heart attack.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And exactly about the time that he would have been called up to testify about his actions as a chief of operations at the Miami station of the CIA during the Bay of Pigs and all the
that was when the Senate subcommittee on assassinations was looking into things back in the 70s, and they were going to call him up. And at this, when I say you, obviously not you, the listeners, if you go out and you research who he was, you'll see Morales was connected, to the RFK assassination, the JFK assassination, the whole plumbers union. To be a plumber in the CIA meant you got rid of the clog. Do you understand, ladies?
Well, it's for wet work. That's
Yes.
why they called them plumbers. It was for wet work, which was getting blood on yourself.
Exactly. The clog would be your target, and you were to go remove the clog. And they could openly say, "Oh, they're plumbers." Mm-hmm. And anybody in the know meant that they were assassins. They were part of a team. It's all part of Operation 40, and then Nixon was running that. You can go. I think from the research I've done, I think they set Nixon up because I think he was looking into what happened. Obviously, he knew what was going on with JFK, but I think he was starting to ask questions and starting to poke his nose where he shouldn't have. Not that he was a clean individual.
Oh, not at all.
But I think he was, and perhaps...
He was sacrificed. I mean, Watergate was a crime, but it was a minor crime.
They threw him to the wolves, dude.
Yeah, they threw him to the wolves for some reason. And obviously in the realm of parapolitics, it's very rare that you get the full picture, so we're kind of extrapolating what we know to be true and a conclusion for what we know to be true, which may or may not be true. But it appears that Nixon was totally thrown to the wolves because something on that could have been cleaned up. Woodward and Bernstein could have died in car accidents. For some reason, Nixon was allowed to be devoured.
Well, if you read... a great book about this. Actually, both books you got to get from Prouty if you get a chance. The Secret Team, and then he's got another book called JFK. And in his book JFK, he talks about Watergate, and he talks about all this. And he at least from his viewpoint and his knowledge, he says that the Pentagon Papers were fake anyway. That's why when everybody made this big deal about the Pentagon Papers and Bradley Manning and everything else, and Ellsberg is out there on TV running around like he's the holiest of holies of journalists now, and everybody's like, well, what did you go through? How come it was so different and everything else? But if you read his paper, if you read Prouty's work, he says that whole thing was set up. McNamara, pretty much wrote the Pentagon Papers. They released what they wanted people to release because they knew certain stuff was going to get out. The Vietnam War had been going on for, 20 years.
Yeah, this is in the latter stages of the Vietnam War.
People have no clue that Vietnam. People think Vietnam started back in the 60s. It started in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't know that.
Yeah, oh yeah. When the French were in Indochina occupying Vietnam, we paid for every cent of that war. We paid for all their equipment, all their ammunition, everything. The French weren't paying for that. It was French troops and mercenaries on the ground, French Foreign Legion and so forth. But the taxpayer in the U.S. was footing the bill for that. And as soon as the French pulled out, we put American boots on the ground.
Yeah, and Prouty shows how there was stuff from World War II that was meant for the mainland invasion or the invasion of mainland Japan that never. It never got there. And then between the Korean War, some of it ended up over there. Some of it ended up in the jungles of Vietnam to be used, from the 50s until the 70s to take out our own guys. And this was stuff that was manufactured 20, 30 years before for a different conflict. And they said, oh, we're not going to do that. We're going to drop A-bombs. See, a lot of people don't know there was a plan for the invasion of mainland Japan. They knew that they were going to take heavy casualties with, Marines and Army and everything else. They didn't care. They were going to invade mainland Japan and take it over.
My grandfather was in the 2nd Marine Division. He had already served in 5 Pacific campaigns as an infantryman. And the 2nd Marine Division was going to be the Beachhead Division. And after I believe the 3rd or 4th day in the war plans, there was no further mention of the 2nd Marine Division because it was expected that the 2nd Marine Division would no longer exist.
Yeah, they figured it was going to get completely wiped out.
Oh, yeah.
They were looking in the casualties the first couple of days of hundreds of thousands, is what they were estimating. And then they got their hands on uranium and fuses, which came via Germany because we had gotten their scientists. We used all the material we had enriched to do the Trinity test. After that test, we had no more material that we could go out and literally make a bomb with. We didn't have it.
It had taken years to develop that material, and we had expended it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then everybody goes, well, then where'd you get the uranium for 2 bombs? Well, it came over in Gold Line casks from Germany. We smuggled a lot of stuff over here that people don't know about. They basically lacked a delivery system. And we had a delivery system, but not enough fuel and not the proper fuses that they had. And we brought their fuse guy over. We brought their uranium over. The SS destroyed a ton of technology before anybody got their hands on it. I mean, who knows what the Soviets got their hands on, but, the SS destroyed a ton of stuff. I mean, they did find pictures at the very least, and I know they probably did find at least one functioning saucer-like aircraft.
Yep, it had a Panzer tank turret attached to it.
Yep, they were dicking with anti-gravity technology. Again, this is back in the 40s. Now, if they knew, and when I say they, I mean the powers that be, think about this for a second. If they knew back in the 40s that anti-gravity technology existed, why are we still driving around in 2012, on 4 wheels? Why is it not like the Jetsons?
How come we get the same gas mileage as a Model T Ford?
Yeah, exactly. You can tell me technology hasn't made a leap? Come on.
Well, it's the greatest slowdown in technology. I mean, we went from, in the early part of the 20th century, from the Wright brothers. Orville Wright lived to see the progeny of his what he cranked out of his bicycle shop. He met Chuck Yeager, the man who broke the sound barrier in the X-1. Orville Wright watched that thing streak across the sky. We went from that tremendous leap in technology in the first half of the 20th century to an almost complete shutdown following World War II. I mean, there obviously has been some progress. We have the internets and cell phones. But in terms of the exponential rise in technology that was being forecast and had the potential to come to fruition, that has never occurred. I mean, look at the space program. I mean, the movie 2001, all of those, the technology shown in the movie 2001 by Stanley Kubrick, he consulted scientists of the day, and they fully expected by the year 2001 that there was no problem with having a permanent orbiting space station, a colony on Moon and Mars, and exploratory flights to Jupiter. None of that has occurred. There's been a deliberate, it seems, a retardation of the progress that was promised.
And I've used that term before. Retardation is a perfect term because it's a slowing down. Retarding something means to slow it down, and that's
that's an actual definition. It's not, I wasn't referring to.
No, well, see, that's it's important to use these terms in their proper way, Holland, because people have been, they've been taught the misuse of the word and not the proper meaning, and then they start using it incorrectly. And I think that if we expect people to use it in its proper context, it's at the very least, it's our duty to use it in the proper context and make sure people, hammer home the understanding of it, so it gets rid of the stupid emotions that are meant to be evoked when you hear certain terms. It's like when you hear the term conspiracy, it's the same thing. People automatically, oh Jesus, here we go. Yet if you go to court and you and your buddy and somebody else, if you and I can, got together and said,
if we have a plan that involves more than one person,
doing anything, we're conspiring. Holland, you and I are going to go, rob James tomorrow when he gets out. You and I are going to go jump him and take, whatever.
Oh, that's a conspiracy theory, dude.
Well, yeah, but you see what I'm saying? That's just a theory until we do it, and then it's not a theory anymore. Then it's a fact.
It's called collusion. We should call it collusion theory from now on.
That's a good idea. See, I've been trying to figure out different terms and, things to, words to, try to pump into people's heads to get them away from the things that we've all been taught. Not just, it's not like I'm better than anybody. I was taught a lot of all the same crap too. It's just I see through it now, and I'm trying to give everybody the same pair of shades that I have. I'm trying to put on Rowdy Piper's sunglasses on everybody. That's what I'm trying to do.
Well, I often use the term the counter-narrative, because the narrative is what is being preached to us as the truth. And, of course, narratives are open to interpretation. So the counter-narrative is what we say that disputes this narrative that is passed to us by the powers that be.
Yeah, I like that. Counter-narrative. See, these are the things that could stick. We need to push this. Because, again, what's taught to everybody via the mainstream media and by teachers and of course, all this is all these different outlets are controlled by the same people. So when you have 5 different ways to plug in, but all of them are controlled by the very same, one group of individuals, you're not going to get anything but the propaganda. And I understand the dumbing down, the retardation, not only of society, but I see it in, like we were talking about, every aspect of technology, dude. I mean, when I was a kid, we were told by the time I was in my 30s that we'd be in flying cars, there'd be robots all over the place, although I'm not a fan of robots and giving robots artificial intelligence. I saw enough Terminator movies to know that's a bad idea, okay? Which, that's another thing we can get into. There's a great movie, if anybody gets a chance to see it, this documentary. I've been trying to get them on my radio show, but the people that did it, for some reason, they're hard to get convinced to come on radio shows, or perhaps they don't like the fact that I'm a conspiracy-oriented show, but they made a movie it's a documentary. They made it for the CBC in Canada called Remote Control War. And they were interviewing this Air Force general in there, and he's like, oh, yeah, it's just a matter of time before they realize that the weakest link in one of these, once you give a drone AI, the weakest link in the structure now is going to become the human pilot.
The singularity is something that is talked about in government policy papers as a given, that it is going to occur, that AI is going to be achieved, and it's going to come to its own conclusions regarding the human race. This is something they are preparing to deal with, and there is no question in the minds of high policymakers that it is going to occur.
Well, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Why do we have to make it? We don't have to do that. We just want to feel, I don't want to say we, these psychopaths want to feel like God.
Well, it reminds me of the movie or the books, the Dune series, when there was a ban on computerized thinking. And that's why they had to develop the mentats, the human computers, to calculate things at a high rate, because they had fought an intergalactic or interplanetary war against AI, and the human race had barely survived, and forever they put a ban on artificial intelligence. Even, I guess the Dune series took place in like 10,000 years from now, but even then they would not tolerate AI because of its potential.
Well, I've read enough books and seen enough movies to know that, first of all, you have this artificial intelligence that's, that if it's at a certain level, like a dumbed down level, that's one thing. But they're talking about giving these drones like super duty AI, and then on top of it, eventually the order, even if they can fly and take off and everything on their own, the order, they always say, well, the order to drop a bomb or fire a missile or whatever will be solely given by a human only. But this Air Force general admits that in the future, and not too distant, I may add, eventually they're going to realize that the weakest link is the human being, and they're going to give the AI the ability to decide whether or not to take a human being's life. So now you are effectively giving robots the ability to say, you know what, you no longer, you're a threat for whatever reason, and you've seen it in movies where the robot goes batshit crazy.
It's just not movies. It's just not movies. I mean, the Project for National Security Reform, which is chaired by former CIA directors, former Joint Chiefs of Staff, I have their policy papers, and they talk about in the future, they're envisioning future scenarios, that in the near future, I believe 2020, they plan on and they foresee that every politician and so-called VIP or important person in this country will have a personal drone assigned to them, which will follow their movements 24 hours a day and will respond to threats upon their person. You're not going to have some computer geek watching the monitor 24/7 on, Governor so-and-so with their personal drone. That's going to be AI.
And that's frightening, dude. People think, oh, that's awesome, man. I would love to have an artificial intelligent robot. No, you wouldn't. Again, all you had to do is go watch Terminator 4 to know, even though it's a crappy movie, just go watch Terminator 4 and know that that's a bad idea, okay? Always think in worst case scenario and, plan for the worst, and then if you get the best, then you're good to go. And if it does roll down the pike the way you trained for, at least you're prepared, not running around like a putz. Because there's no way that giving artificial intelligence the go-ahead to say, you can just snuff out humans. Because what happens when the robot, Holland, turns around and goes, well, I've done statistics, and humans are, like they show in the movies, the human race is bad, so we must eliminate the human race. Mm-hmm. Hello? I mean, and these rich morons, if they think that they'll be able to control this stuff and it won't turn on them as well, they're insane. They're just as, out of their mind. And the general public not getting pissed about the whole drone issue. Dude, they used one down here, and I know that they're already down here. That's why it didn't surprise me. But we have that Memorial Day party down in South Beach in Miami down there, and it gets crazy. Well, this year they admitted that they used a drone, and there's video footage out there on YouTube from the drone looking at partiers on South Beach from a UAV. And people are like, oh, well, that's scary that they use that drone. And I'm like, dude, they use them every day down here. The Border Patrol has been patrolling Florida with predators for like 3 years now. Why is that a surprise to you? I guess because I know it's not a surprise to me, but I see people, it's good to see them doing things like this that wake people up. But again, I'm not happy that they're doing things like this because, who the hell wants a predator spying on them?
Well, just wait for the Law and Order episode where a predator drone saves someone's life, and then it'll all be nice and they'll be fine with it. They
love to piss all over the Constitution on that show. You ever notice that? These damn perps and their constitutional rights. That little girl got raped and killed because of the Constitution. That's pretty much the way they always they frame things on that show.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk, it's always the noble cop trying to save the public who's confronted with the Constitution. But you know what? You just got to do some things to subvert people's rights for the greater good. That's the ultimate goal and the ultimate lesson and what they're trying to impart to the American people is that individual rights are an impediment to security and freedom and whatever. I mean, that's the show is blatant propaganda.
Well, what did Spock say in the end of, was it The Search for Khan? You want to talk about, and I look back at older movies now and with fresh eyes, and I'm like, wow, there's propaganda back then too. But the Wrath of Khan, that's what it was. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. In the end, the thing
the rights of the many outweigh the rights of the few, or something like
needs
that.
Spock's dying. And he said, "Spock, why did you do it?" And he says, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." And I never, when I was a kid, I was like, "Wow, how noble!" Blah blah blah. And now I know, about programming and everything else, and I'm like, "Oh my God!" Even back then, they were pushing it in your face that, and when you look at what they plan. That's what they push. It sounds noble, right? Oh, I'm a hero, Holland. I put myself above everybody else. I save people.
Yeah, well, Starfleet Command was like an intergalactic UN with a one world government on Earth, of course.
Yeah, very true. It was like an intergalactic UN. Halo, the video game, gets into that too, where it's a one world government scenario. You know what? The break is going to sneak up on us here, Holland. Ladies and gentlemen, hour number 1 up, hour number 2 coming up. Holland and I will get more into predictive programming when we get back, so stay tuned. You don't want to miss it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. It is July 13th, 2012. That's right, the dreaded Friday the 13th, 2012. I kind of like Friday the 13th. I consider 13 to be my lucky number. I have it tattooed on me in multiple spots. So to me, Friday the 13th has a little bit different of a meaning. I don't feed into it. Therefore, I don't give that the negative energy that it requires to actually for things to come to fruition. Think about that. All right. Joining me for hour number 2, same guest I had on hour number 1, my good friend, fellow researcher, radio show host, an all-around good guy, and the legend himself, the filmmaker of A Noble Lie, Mr. Holland Vandennieuwenhof. Holland, welcome back, buddy.
Thanks, Popeye.
I like doing that to you sometimes. You're easygoing, so you flow with ball busting well. All right, I want to get into the conversation that you and I were having during the break. I sometimes wish. We could, somehow record the. I could do it on my end. I guess I probably should record the off-air stuff sometimes because we get into. Sometimes we get into some really good details. So I had to stop us so that we could hold it over until we got back on air because I didn't want to. Sometimes you might forget things. You might not give as many intricate details. So that's why I stopped us. But for the listeners' sake, we were discussing how the intelligence agencies of different countries. Usually are the ones that foment a lot of these terrorist attacks. I'm doing air quotes again. Terrorist attacks inside of different countries to slaughter civilians to then justify going in for humanitarian reasons, as you've seen in Libya and as you're seeing right now in Syria. And I brought up to Holland, I asked him what his thoughts on this were because I saw an article over at InfoWars. And the author of it, Tony Cartolucci, he's a reputable author. The guy's not some fly-by-night, crappy, just blogger who doesn't know what he's talking about. He's usually on point with what he writes about. So I read the article, and it was talking about how the U.S. is now claiming Syria is moving nerve gas out of storage, and they're going to use it on the citizens. The Syrian government's going to use nerve gas. They're moving it out. And of course, this report comes, according to the article, from a quote-unquote activist, a Syrian activist, which, Al Qaeda-controlled rebel, right? Mm-hmm. So they're saying that this nerve gas is being moved by the Syrian government. And what Tony said in his article basically was that, is this a false flag coming? Keep an eye out. This is a possible, false flag where the government of, our government or using, some proxy country, whatever, maybe Turkey, whoever will, or probably CIA and special forces are going to go in and drop off or I should say release poison nerve gas or whatever and kill a bunch of people and then say the Syrian government did it, crimes against humanity, get everybody all in tears and worked up and try to use this as an excuse to go in militarily and invade Syria the same way that they did Libya and perhaps even more, perhaps actually putting at least in people's eyes boots on the ground because we all know there were boots on the ground in Libya.
Oh, yeah, they were caught on camera. BBC got some SAS operators on the ground. But the Syria thing is problematic for the powers that be because the Alawite regime in Syria is not particularly oppressive of its people. It's no worse than the Gulf states and certainly far less oppressive than the House of Saud, which is one of the enemies of the Alawite sect that the ruling family that controls Syria. The Gulf states hate the ruling family that controls Syria because it's from what they consider a heretical division of Islam. And, of course, we see that WikiLeaks has exposed that the Gulf states, Oman, UAE, Qatar, and Saud, were really pushing for an invasion of Iran because they don't like Iran because it's Shiite and they are Sunni. But they're going to have a hard time demonizing the ruling family in Syria because it's not particularly oppressive of its people. It never has been. I mean, it's by no means a free country, but there's not a whole lot of torture and murder and political persecution, far less than other states in the region that are very friendly with ours. So they're going to most likely have to manufacture a horrendous event to justify a full incursion because, I mean, the rebellion, the so-called rebellion, which is largely manufactured, the violent rebellion that is not achieving any military progress in Syria and never will. I mean, they're not going anywhere, and that's not good. If you're not making progress, you're probably falling back, and that's probably what's happening. So to justify boots on the ground and at the very least a massive NATO air campaign a la Libya, there's going to have to be a threat or some kind of crime that is so horrible that it will justify this international intervention. And it seems to be that the groundwork and the prior PR is definitely pointing towards a chemical attack in Syria that will be blamed on the Syrian government. That will be, of course, be laid upon so-called Syrian rebels. Of course, everyone will expect the Syrian government to deny this, which they will, but they will, of course, be denying truthfully that they had any involvement with this. No one's going to believe that anybody would be cold-blooded enough to gas their own proxies to justify another intervention. So I think, and for some reason, they really seem to be concentrating on Syria. They're really pouring a lot of resources into it, and I don't think they're going to back off. They need a successful outcome. And to justify that and to get that, they're probably going to have to manufacture a horrendous crime.
And it's not like they haven't done that in the past. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And we still have the lingering legend of the WMDs that were smuggled into Syria.
Well, yeah, that's actually a good point that you brought up during the break. That's a really important thing for people to focus on and remember. That fact right there. And I'm willing to bet. What are you willing to bet that they will break that out and say, hey, you remember the reason we didn't find the WMDs in Iraq was because they smuggled them out into Syria. Now, this whole time, this civil war has been going on, and all this time since Iraq, no WMDs, no urgence to invade Syria. I mean, I know they wanted to, but media-wise, I didn't see them saying, oh, my God, the weapons are there. They moved them. We have to follow into Syria right now. No.
The 1% doctrine. If there's a 1% chance of a weapon of mass destruction being used, that's a 100% probability that we must stop it. That's the 1% doctrine that was formulated by the Bush administration. And if those weapons had been moved into Syria, according to that, we should have gone in then. But the thing about Syria is that this is, I believe, part of a larger geopolitical game. There's really nothing to be gained in terms of resources in Syria. Syria has no oil. They have to import their gasoline. It's a relatively poor country. There's not a whole lot there to own and profit from. There's not at all. So obviously there is a larger geopolitical game in progress, probably aimed at Iran, because Iran has thus far been a no-go for invasion because of various maneuverings by the Iranian government and so forth. So I believe Syria is being sacrificed on the altar of geopolitical chess.
Well, yeah, because they're on what do you call it? I'm not an acquaintance, an ally. I couldn't remember the word. Skipped my brain for a second. They're an ally of Iran.
To some extent, but we've also enjoyed favored nation status with Syria during the extraordinary rendition program, which I'm sure is still going on, but when at its height during the Bush administration, many of the so-called terrorism suspects that we were kidnapping off the streets of the globe were being shipped to Syria by the CIA to be tortured.
CIA black sites.
Yes, so I mean, if the CIA and this government trusted the intelligence services of Syria enough to interrogate and torture these terrorism suspects, why all of a sudden are they the bad guy?
Well, it's the same thing with Libya. Mm-hmm. We were using their intelligence services to bring our to do the same thing. They were renditioning people over to Libya, and then they would use the Libyan forces would torture them and everything else to get information out of them for the CIA. And this was all done, hush hush, don't tell anybody. And then a couple years later, we're dropping bombs on the very same people that we were giving all this money to. I mean, how much money did we give to the Libyan government in the bailout? Remember the bailout back, it was in 2007, 2008? Everybody said, no, we don't want to give all this money to these banking scumbags. Just, the greatest theft in the history of this country, pretty much the world, monetarily.
Oh, yeah.
And they're robbing everybody blind. And it's this game where I guess it still amazes me, even though I know the level of mind control and the level of retardation of people's thinking that's been going on. It just amazes me how they're doing it right in people's faces now. It's pretty much like they're just waving their genitalia in people's faces, Holland, and saying, ha 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 ha, we control everything, we don't care. I mean,
well, if we accept what has happened, and there is no accountability, that's permission to take it farther. That they gain power from the apathy and from the tacit consent through lack of prosecution and lack of protest. They gain tacit consent to continue to expand these activities.
Well, according to the law, the law society, silence is consent. So if you don't voice your opinion, then you must be okay with it because you didn't say anything. But what they don't put forward with that is the fact that they use intimidation and fear tactics and stuff like that to silence people and keep them from saying anything, so that nobody wants to come forward for fear that I don't want somebody showing up at my house at 3:00 in the morning and threatening my wife and my kids or anything like that. So I go along to get along, dude.
Yeah. Then that's definitely how you move up in propaganda circles. What I mean by media is going along to get along, and if you get out of line, they'll shoot up your house like they did to Lou Dobbs.
Yeah, now look at him. Mm-hmm. He toes the party line now. You notice he doesn't talk about the same stuff that he used to talk about back in the day. He used to say the term New World Order. He used to talk about a North American Union all the time.
The Amero, yeah.
Yeah, he used to talk about the Amero, all the time. He used to have guests on talking about it. Do you ever hear him talk about that stuff anymore over at Fox Business now? No.
Well, I don't watch mainstream.
Well, very true. I don't watch it either. So maybe he does once in a while, but from what I've seen, he doesn't. From what I've seen of Dobbs, he toes the party line. Looks like he got a little bit of plastic surgery done. So, I mean, I'm sure he got the message. I'm sure being fired from, what was it, CNN that he worked at the time?
Yeah, they actually did shoot. They did a drive-by on his house, too. So.
Yeah, and then they shot at his house. So I'm sure between being fired and actually shooting at him, he got the message to shut up. And, if you and your wife want to live another 20 years, you'll keep your mouth shut. Which, that goes to show you the level and the place that we're at. We have Tony Soprano and his crew running the government.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's where we're at. It's totally out there in your face. They will kill you if you get in the ultimate way of their objective. I mean, you'll probably get a couple warnings first, but if you don't play along, they'll take care of business. I mean, this is a criminal, corrupt government. And, the intelligence services of this nation, they started cooperating with the mafia in the 1940s, and they learned a lot from the mafia, and then they co-opted the mafia and ran them, and they owned the game. They took it from them, but it's the same thing. It's brute force.
Yeah, it's like this stuff, and people, go back and look at history. Come on, look at the stories that we grew up reading when we were kids. The Sheriff of Nottingham. What do we have that today? We literally have that kind of thing going on today. People always say when they see movies, man, if they ever came on my property, I'd kick the crap out of him. I wouldn't take that. You are taking it. Every day you're taking it. Don't say you wouldn't take that. You are, man.
Yeah.
I think that's it. And people live in denial, Holland. You know, I know that there's a massive level of mind control, but when it comes to, still to this day, I've seen, like, I'll use my website as an example. I see people leave comments. I get trackbacks all the time, you know, so I'll go check, hey, you know, if there's a new website, oh, look, they linked, that's cool, whatever. And a lot of times it'll be like on a forum or something. And like the other day I saw one on a survivalist forum, and there was 2 or 3 people that took the information seriously, and I forget what the article was about, but it wasn't something off the wall or anything. It was, and it was an accurate article. You know, I don't post fake crap. And the comments were like, oh, did you look at the site? It could be bad. There could be viruses on it. And it wasn't like they were saying my virus thing like people had said in the past, oh, it popped up. Nothing. They just said there could be malware on there. It looks shady. Or come on, did you see the because my tagline at the top of the site says conspiracy is no longer theory. And they're like, oh, did you see it says conspiracy right at the top of the site. The guy's obviously a nut job.
That's a trigger word. That's an implanted trigger word to evoke a desired response. And if you respond emotionally to such a term, you have been subjected and fallen victim to the mind control. If that's the response that is evoked, that didn't come from within you, that was implanted in you by another party.
Exactly. You were like Charlotte Iserby talks about operant conditioning, where we're conditioned with certain things, even if you not just in school either. I mean, that's why you have to notice, you know, getting back to the predictive programming part of it. When about a week ago, my wife brought this a friend of hers lent her the show True Blood from HBO. It's about vampires, right? But not the faggy European style thing, that whatever the Twilight thing. Not that crap. This is, I guess it's set in Louisiana. It's a little more straightforward, whatever. Anyway, there's the sexual overtones in the show. I mean, there's just constantly from the time the show starts to the time it goes off. There's naked people running around, men and women. You know, it's the constant theme of sex. A lot of satanic references and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's just the things when I said to my wife, I said, you know, she'll be sitting there watching it and I'm watching it with her. And I start pointing stuff out. Now she's to the point where she points it out too. But I'm like, did you hear what he just said? You know, he made a comment. And if you listen, the characters of the show make offhanded comments all the time in reference to things like what's going on in reality. One of them made a comment to one of the females in the show and said, oh, you know, you humans are so easily, your minds are so easily controlled. You know, you have no idea. And references to things like that in the extras part. And I go through stuff like this if I know that it's got like heavy overtones and predictive programming and things in it. I always go through it to try to see if I can pinpoint anything that, you know, especially if it's something that's older and then something's happened in between then and now, I can say, see, you know, look what they were talking about. And there's this little clip where this one vampire is getting grilled by a police officer in like the interrogation room, and he goes, well, I'm not supposed to come forward, but the guy's like, well, isn't your life going to be in danger? And he goes, well, I'm already an outsider because I don't agree with what's going on and everything else. And he goes, what do you mean? And he goes, are you trying to tell me there's some sort of vast worldwide vampire conspiracy? And the guy, you know what the guy's answer was? He goes, well, do you think the economic collapse happened on its own? Do you really think it was just people buying houses they couldn't afford? And I looked at my wife and I was like, did you hear what he just said? And she was like, yeah. I said, do you see how they insert it right into the media, and then they force feed it to the people, and people buy into it, but at the same time they hear conspiracy. Now if someone hears oh, you know, they conspired to take down the It evokes.
It evokes that.
Yeah, from the vampire show.
Oh yeah.
You know, what are you watching True Blood too much? And it's amazing because it's exactly the things that people will say to you, and you're like, oh, it gets so frustrating when I see it. I can't watch TV anymore, man. I can't.
Yeah, the implantable triggers, they're not laid out there like in your face because they have no effect, because it would generate an organic opposition. It's when it's somewhat subconscious or off to the side that generates no opposition. That's where it can set roots, because it evokes no opposition from your inner core. And like I said before, this is a well-refined methodology that has been developed over at least decades in popular media.
Yeah, and they put it in there, and I got to tell you, man, I know that not every writer involved is, the New World Order. I know there's probably one person at the top that just says, try to incorporate these ideas into it, and then they go do their research and maybe base it off conspiracies type sites and stuff like that or whatever, because they think it's a joke anyway. Mm-hmm. But the way it's always put across is that it's never accurate. And that anybody that talks about, the C word is, and I don't mean the 4-letter C word, I mean the longer one, conspiracy. Anybody that says that word is a nut job. It's just insane to me. 100 years ago, if I walked around and said, the government is conspiring to screw us over, the people would be like, that sounds about accurate. Yeah, the government sucks. Now people are like, what are you talking about? The government loves you, Popeye. They love you.
Well, that's the paradigm that's being implanted in our consciousness. When the mainstream news and the mainstream popular entertainment is part of your daily intake of information, that is your go-to source for information, that informs your worldview. It's like the German phrase for the Nazi phrase for psychological warfare was actually worldview warfare. And it was competing worldviews. And when you immerse yourself in television, in popular news, in entertainment and media, that forms your worldview. And that's how you interpret all the information that comes in through your daily life, your daily interactions, your conversations with people. You put it through the filter of your worldview. And when it's formed by the mainstream, which is corporate controlled, that's how it's going to be processed.
I couldn't have said it better myself. You're exactly 100% correct. And how many times have you had a conversation with somebody and their answer is to literally spew a talking point, which either they just heard on Fox News, CNN, or MSNBC, or it's something that they heard on, maybe radio or whatever. But within the past 2 days, they heard it, and now it's verbatim. They're, no, Holland, you are incorrect. The Oklahoma City bombing wasn't an inside job. The federal government said blah, 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 blah. It's just, it gets frustrating. I'm going to cut us off because we got a break coming up. So I'll have you pick it up on the other side right there. Ladies and gentlemen, Holland and I will be right back. Don't go anywhere. A few minutes. Last segment coming up. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Final segment of tonight's edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. And I'm hanging out with my buddy, Holland Vandennieuwenhof. Remember, he is a filmmaker, so go check out his excellent, excellent film, A Noble Lie, about the Oklahoma City disaster. Go check it out. I urge you to, for real. I mean, it helped wake my 70-year-old father up. So perhaps it'll help wake up your 70-year-old father or younger relative, whoever. Go check it out. Might even just wake you up. Just go check it out. Believe me, you won't regret it. It's worth it. All right, Holland. During the break, as always, we were having a really excellent conversation. And I know it seems to. It's amazing how it all just, when you look at it from, 3 or 4 feet back further than someone normally would, you can see how it's all interconnected. You know what I mean? The mind control aspect, the false flag operations, the things that go on with these, intelligence agencies, what they're doing to the general public, predictive programming. You can see how everything that we've discussed tonight dovetails and connects with one another like puzzle pieces.
Mm-hmm, exactly. It's a congruent whole. They're not isolated incidents at all.
No, not by any means. And for people to think that, they're, oh, come on, 7/7, OKC, and 9/11, none of them are related at all. Really?
Well, I mean, they're linked not only by methodology, by methods of cover-up, but some of the same operators. And it's cybernetics. Cybernetics was invented by the CIA in the early 1960s. I mean, that cannot be denied. All the major anthropologists and social scientists who formulated the science of cybernetics, which is the study of control systems and controlling human beings from a scientific standpoint. It's not portrayed that way, but that's what it is. That was invented by the CIA, and that's proven by a memo from Director of Central Intelligence Richard Helms, advocating the growth and study of cybernetics, and many of the scientists involved, Gregory Bateson and others, who are credited with founding cybernetics, were also working under MK Ultra contract. It is a whole. It is perhaps, you could say, a pyramid where it's initiated at one point and its tentacles spread throughout eventually every aspect of our society, of the control grid. And the more we sit back and just observe, the more it sinks its hooks in, and the harder it is to get away.
And now they got the cyberspace control. You know, we were talking about during the break.
I was telling you, I was driving outside Tinker Air Force Base outside of Oklahoma City. I was actually going to a relative's house out in the country, and this was near Tinker Air Force Base, which is one of the largest Air Force bases in the country. It's the logistical hub, at least of the central part of the United States. And I was driving by this building. It was in the woods. It had a fence around it, and a relatively new building, and it was an Air Force facility. It had an Air Force crest. And I forget the number, it was like 807th or whatever, but it was like 807th Cyberspace Warfare Group. And I was like, what the hell is that? What are they doing all day? Are they on Facebook? Are they trolling? I mean, cyberspace warfare? So there are a large group of military personnel who are paid at least 8 hours out of their day to conduct cyberspace warfare. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, and for people that think that's a lie, the military has admitted themselves. You can go look it up on federaljack.com. You can Google it if you want, or whatever search engine you use. Look it up on Military Times or Air Force Times, and I think even military.com you might find, unless they've scrubbed articles. But you can find it. I know I have articles about it from those sources up at Federal Jack if you want to go there. But they admit, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, that they had the Air Force and the Army have programs that were designed by outside contractors for them that allows them to go on Facebook as 10 different people at once.
Oh yeah, that came out, and they can, and you see it. I mean, I remember a couple months back, I was reading on Yahoo News about some atrocity in Iraq. I forget which one, and I went down to the comment section to see what people were saying. There should have been, some outrage, and there was a mild amount, but every other comment, it was obvious they were all speaking from the same script, because they were using the same sound bites, the same talking points. I was like, this is that's a computer program. Those aren't random dudes or people speaking their mind. That is an active manipulation, PR, damage control of a potentially embarrassing event, and it's being managed, and they're manufacturing consent basically by managing these comment sections of these websites, and that's, is that to be not expected? Of course. I mean, it's the law of utility. Why would they not engage in such things to manipulate public opinion? Of course they would, and they do, and the evidence is there.
And we know they do it. I mean, I've seen it myself. I've seen the evidence myself, to back up that they admit that they do it. I mean, not only do you have the evidence coming out from the people that made the program admitting it, but you have the military themselves. Even, Petraeus admits that they're on cyberspace all the time. And then a couple months ago, he came out and said now the CIA, because he's the director of the CIA now they want to watch you through, your kitchen appliances and everything else. And I've had hackers on my show to talk about this, and they've said right now the infrastructure of the country and everything is not, I will repeat, is not hooked up to the internet like they have you believe. They might have a Comcast cable line going in so that they could get, some high-speed internet. to go online and maybe go on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or something, but they do not have the reactors or anything like that, or the electrical grids or anything like that hooked up to the internet. The airports are not hooked up to the internet. Hackers can't just sit in their room with a laptop and hack, airplane control towers and crash things like in Die Hard 2. Again, predictive programming. That is not a reality. It will become a reality because they are moving towards that.
Exactly. And if they manufacture an event and blame it upon the openness of the internet, you will see a transformation of the internet into something that it is not today, which is for the most part a free and open source of information. You're going to see China-style controls. I mean, outgoing UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, he was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and he talked about how we need China-style controls on the internet. And this is one of the so-called leaders of the free world lusting after government control of the internet. So, I mean, obviously, there is an agenda, and that is something that it's their wet dream, and they will accomplish it given the proper context.
And, dude, they're aiming for it. I mean, I had conversations with the hacker Winston, starting back 6 or 8 months ago. I brought him on specifically to start talking about these things because I knew, from conversations him and I were having off air that, we could tell that that's where it was headed. And I wanted to point out and say, I wanted to go on record as saying, look, this is what's going to happen, because that way when it does happen, it validates what we've been talking about this whole time. It shows people that, look, you see, we weren't kidding. And he came out and he's talked about how he said, they're going to try to, hook up appliances. They're going to try to put everything. They want to hook it to the grid, and they're going to spy on you through it. And when he first said that, everybody thought, I got a couple of emails, people telling me, he's really cool, but really, do you guys really believe that they're going to try to spy on you through your refrigerator and your stuff?
Why would they not? I mean, what world are these people coming? Why would they not?
Well, then like a month or two, but like a month and a half later, Petraeus came out and admitted that that's what their goal is. And I was like, you see? He said it. This is a guy that has insider knowledge. He understands things. I'm telling you, here you go. They're doing this. Then he came out and said they're going to do false flag hack attacks and they're going to blame Anonymous. Because I asked him, I said, are they going to blame Anonymous for this stuff? He said, yeah. They're going to. A lot of times the things that Anonymous gets blamed for, or maybe you might see a quote unquote faction of Anonymous taking credit for, it's actually feds, and they're it's a fake thing. It's not them. It's really, it's not this. It's not a group of people getting together to do something, hacktivism or whatever. It's the feds doing something under the guise of that to blame them. And now look at the new Call of Duty game. Look at the new Call of Duty game, dude.
Yeah, the evil mastermind is the leader of the 99%.
Mm-hmm. 2 months ago, we came out, and I saw.
I mean, I think they may have. Did they go too far on that? Do you think
the trailer for it, or the original trailer for Call of Duty, when it first came out, I came on air and I had him back on and to talk about that and how they were putting predictive programming on so he could point it out, because he was one of the people that was really pissed off about it, and. He pointed it out to me. I hadn't even seen the trailer yet, so I went back and I looked at it, and they're talking about terrorists, quote-unquote cyber terrorists, hacking Predator drones, flying over the U.S., and then bombing people in the U.S. with them. And now, now we're going to have troops on the streets. Oh, my God. Blah. And they're,
and blaming it on the Occupy movement.
Well, it was going through the thing of the terrorists could be, and it says, it's all dramatic music and it's doing flashes, right? Mm-hmm. And it says the terrorists could be anyone, anywhere, something like that. And when they say that, they stop, like they hesitate on the screenshot, and it's the screenshot from one of these anonymous videos that you would see on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And it's a screenshot of the hooded anonymous guy, talking back and forth, and you see that, and they pause on that for a second, and they're like, it could be, the terrorist could be anyone, and you see the V for Vendetta mask, the anonymous thing. So they're trying to put into people's heads, obviously you understand this, that they're trying to implant the idea that if you wear a V for Vendetta mask, not even Not even if you know anything about why that person is wearing it. It's just they're trying to find the lowest common denominator.
Or if you camp out on the sidewalk.
Yeah, or if you camp out on the sidewalk, or if you're a hacker. So if you do any of this stuff, you're now a terrorist that are going to hack drones and bomb people. But wait a minute. Where are they going to get the drones from? Well, the drones are flying patrols over the skies. Well, maybe if we didn't have the drones flying patrols over the skies, they couldn't hack them. And now the government comes out and says, 2 weeks ago, oh, we're worried about, I think it was the Pentagon, we're worried about drones getting hacked and then being used by people to bomb civilians in the country. Really? Really?
Well, don't put hellfire bombs on drones that are circling U.S. cities. And who are the entities that are bombing people with drones currently? That is the U.S. government. I mean, over in Pakistan, that came out in Salon.com, Glenn Greenwald. Not only are we bombing gatherings in Pakistan with drones, that we're bombing the first responders who respond to the attacks. The people who come to pull people out of the wreckage, we're laying hellfires on them. Of course, that is a blatant, any kind of law of warfare that is totally illegal. But that is, of course...
Wait a minute, Holland, you mean other countries have first responders?
Yes.
You mean the United States isn't the only country that has first responders and firefighters?
No. It's like when they leaked that video of the Apache helicopter shooting up those reporters in Baghdad, and then the guy shows up in the van to take the people to the hospital because they were reporters, and the Apache lights up the van with children inside. That is apparently standard operating procedure, is that you nail the first responders.
Well, you know what was really telling, man, was when the Apache pilot, when the ground team was like, "Hey, man, you shot kids," and
he said you shouldn't bring children to a battlefield.
Yeah,
that's a neighborhood.
Shouldn't bring your kids to the battlefield. Well, yeah, dickhead, you brought the battlefield to their neighborhood. And I said, as soon as that comment was made, and again, I served in the military, you served in the military. I don't think it's right to just go into someone's neighborhood and shoot up kids and their parents and kill people and then say, well, you shouldn't have been on the battlefield. Well, if we didn't invade their freaking country, there wouldn't have been a battlefield. There wouldn't have been a problem. I mean, how arrogant of a response is that? See, that was his ego trying to justify what he did. That's what that was. That was his inner ego, the false ego, trying to justify what he did. Because on the inside, I bet you, he might have said that outwardly. I'm willing to bet on the inside, years later, that's going to affect him. Because he knows. That might not affect him then and there because he's got his macho asshole friends around.
And he's got his duties to perform, but it will affect him. And that's why you see the level of suicides in the military now. I mean, how come it isn't front page news and people aren't screaming about the fact that veterans are killing themselves at faster than IEDs are? At least with Vietnam, it took about 20 years before the suicide rate exceeded the combat death rate, another little known fact. But as it stands today, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and elsewhere, the suicides have killed more people than people who have died in combat. And that is because people have to deal with the consequences of what they've accomplished. And I have a couple friends, a good number of friends who've been over in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I have a couple friends who, by their admission, have killed women and children. And they're not so good of friends now. I kind of stay away from people who kill women and children. And they are messed up, man. They are messed up. And we're traumatizing a whole generation of veterans. They're killing themselves off at a rate that's never before seen before. And it's just, that is the human condition, to deny it at first, and then it comes back even greater later on, when you no longer have the validation of your peers and your control and the control system in which you live, when you're just a basic civilian living amongst other people, and now you actually have to take responsibility for your actions. The problem with the electronic killing, the drone killing, and even through the video screen of an Apache gunship helicopter, is that when you're removed from the human equation in killing, there's not so much remorse. There's not so much hesitancy. You don't see PTSD on Air Force pilots who bomb villages. There's not a whole lot of PTSD because they don't see or deal with the human consequences of their actions. And that's one of the real dangers of these drones, is that you have these geeks in flight suits maneuvering with joystick, with video game consoles, these robots in the air that kill people, and they're not going to have the hesitancy to pull the trigger like you would face-to-face with another human being that you see in perhaps infantry combat. There is a level of hesitancy which military training strives to overcome, but you're not going to see that with electronic killing.
That's why they started, boot camp the way that you and I know it, and many other people know it. They started that type of training, in studies after World War I. I mean, they always did military training, but the boot camp style training that I went through, you went through,
it's operant conditioning. They found that in World War II, that in the Battle of Iwo Jima, one of the fiercest infantry ground combat battles in history, that only 1 out of 5 Marine infantrymen actually even fired their rifle in combat, which I still find that figure hard to accept, but still, a great deal and perhaps majority of people in that era were not firing their weapon at the enemy. They were firing around the enemy or not using their weapon at all. They were running around doing other things. So they started using human silhouette targets, operant conditioning to reward the simulation of killing human beings.
And trauma-based mind control, too, because they picked up a lot of that from...
Oh, yeah.
Dude, you think about this. You went through stress positions and all that stuff. I know that you were a Marine. I know that comes hand in hand with going to Marine boot camp. Okay, I know I went through it, right? Mm-hmm. When you saw the pictures from Abu Ghraib, when they were splashing them all over TV, and you saw people, oh my God, they're look what they're doing. They're putting them in these so-called stress positions, and everybody. Now, I'm not saying what happened was. I'm not defending it. What I'm saying is the big deal was being made out of certain things, not the things that should have been made a deal out of, the more horrible things. They talked about the stress positions and the stuff that these E3s and E2s and E4s and maybe E5s did, they were told by these other government agencies to do. But the point is, the stuff that I saw them do, I was like, I don't understand why people are flipping out about the stuff that they're showing. The stuff that they're not showing is probably worse, but the stuff that they're showing is what we went through in boot camp.
Well, that's part of the PR control.
Yeah, they couldn't believe it, though. They were like, what do you mean? You go through that stuff in boot camp? And I was like, what do you think boot camp is, dude? I was like, I've been in the Superman position. I've been in what they called the Taliban fighting position, which was your arms straight up in the air for like an hour and a half. I mean, you have no idea the physical pain, and that's
I have seen a platoon of Marines in boot camp crammed naked into one stall in the bathroom, literally floor to ceiling of naked dudes crammed together with not even an inch of space between them.
Yep, nuts to butts.
Yeah, that's. I mean, this is a well-defined formula and program of dehumanization. Remove your basic human instincts from you and convert you into something else, a killing machine for the government. And it is effective. The price, though, is never, you always pay a price, but you pay it on an individual level, which is also why you see the huge amount of medication that the troops are going through right now. I mean, up to a third of troops in combat are medicated out of their gourd so they can continue to put up with the stress and the dehumanization and what they're doing. So, but the consequences are still there, and that's why they're killing themselves off at a record rate.
Yeah, because they come home and they see a little old lady, and it reminds them of a little old lady that they shot in Iraq.
They have kids, and they have some kids, and they're crawling around their living room, and they look down, and all they can see is that kid they shot in that house in Baghdad, by accident or not, or that grenade they toss into a room on order, and they clear the room, and there's a bunch of dead civilians there, including children, and they see that in the faces of their own children, and they can't live with themselves.
If for people, because we got a few minutes left, for people that don't know the level of this and want to learn more, just go on YouTube and look up IVAW. You can look up the IVAW vids. I don't know if it was on one of the YouTube accounts that got taken down, one of the Federal Jack YouTube accounts that got taken down, I should say. But if you look up IVAW on Federal Jack, I know I had links. I did a whole page where it was, all their videos. I don't know if I updated it and fixed it after the account that originally hosted it was taken down, or if it was on another one. But go check it out. If it's not there, just someone email me, and I'll update it. But if you can't see it there for the time being, just go on YouTube and type in IVAW, Winter Soldier. And there's tons of videos. There's like at least 50 or 60 different video testimonies. Some of them are 3 or 4 videos long of these guys, and they talk about exactly what you just said, Holland. I mean, I've played them on air twice. I have a friend of mine who actually gave testimony at the Winter Soldier in Austin, and that's actually where I got that story from. That's what he did. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's some of the most incredible testimonies you'll ever hear. And these guys it takes courage for these men and women to do what they do. The peer pressure, the conditioning that you're put through, it's just incredible. Holland, we're out of time. As always, when you come on, man, the time just flies by.
Well, have me on again anytime, Popeye.
All right, well, plug your website shamelessly really quick. We got like 10 seconds.
Noblelie.com. Make your purchase today.
Ladies and gentlemen, go ahead, check out his movie, Noble Lie. I urge you. It's a great film. Thank you for tuning in tonight. I'll see you all again Sunday. Make sure to stay tuned. May Brussels coming up. Don't go anywhere.